Welcome to the Checking In podcast from the Great Lakes MHTTC, a series discussing topics related to health equity and the destigmatization of substance use disorder and mental illness.
Welcome to today's Checking In podcast. This podcast is dedicated to raise awareness about PTSD and promoting self-care practices among mental health providers who work with clients or patients who have experienced trauma. Our guest today is Linda Bartoli. Linda is a clinical social worker. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much, Isa. Pleasure to be here today.
Linda, do you want to share a little bit about you?
Sure, I will. I've been a social worker for over 2 decades. Didn't work as a social worker the whole time. I've been a clinician also during that time period. I am a practice owner and also a therapist. So self-care is something that I think about organizationally and culturally and individually.
Right. If you will choose a word to describe the work that you do, which word you will use?
Oh, well, I really like the conversation that's in our field right now about a wounded healer. I really think of this work as two experts in the room, and two people who are trying to be very brave with their knowledge. And, I think we all suffer in some way. And I think that we're trying to understand that, have conversations of understanding our story and our place in our story and the cultural and systems perspective. So, yeah, I don't, that wasn't one word, but.
No, I love it. I love the word wound healer. Love that.
Yeah.
What do you consider to be the most important aspect of your work as a trauma therapist?
Oh, the most, gosh, that's kind of hard to answer. I think what I try to keep in mind is that I try to approach the work in a trauma-informed way. And I try to have a lot of awareness and management around the work. So I'm not constantly, but I'm looking to assess where my client is in the work, where I am in the work, where my organization is in the work, what they need, how we manage that. I really like Judith Herman's perspective of stabilizing, these stages of trauma, stabilizing grief and mourning and integration. So in that, I'm kind of breaking down into what's my awareness of this and what are we managing here? What do we need to do? And I'm trying to keep a perspective where I'm in integrity with myself, and hopefully my client is finding their integrity with self.
COVID, a lot of clinicians started to experience burnout and also compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma. Yeah. And I have a question about what are your top 3 self-care practices to prevent burnout and compassion fatigue?
Yeah. Well, my top practices, and I also asked my colleagues in our practice what their top practices are, and they kind of coincide. I think that they're both proactive responses and also preemptive. So I use a lot of awareness to notice. And going back to that management, and with the awareness, if I'm noticing I'm hypervigilant, or if I'm noticing I'm stepping out of frame with the clinical work that I'm doing, like not setting a boundary that I normally set. These are clue-ins for me that something's going on. And if I notice what's going on in my body, I can attend to them. So proactively, what I do and what many of my colleagues do at Pivot is we really try to kind of think about how do we set up the work? So we have an internal system. How do we set up the work? And then how do we attend to ourselves? So I'm thinking about how I schedule clients. I'm thinking about the routines that I have in between sessions. I'm thinking about, do I have too many sessions for this day? How do I give myself a balance? I'm also thinking about what is good for me in self-care, and when am I out of my window of tolerance, not only with the work, but outside of the work, like in my relationships. If I'm noticing that I'm getting critical, or if I'm overly attentive to somebody else's need, then I move into other self-care, which is staying compassionate with myself and staying in this place where I'm open to have options of how I attend to myself. I think what we do also, what I do and what others do, is trauma and vicarious trauma. It's, we kind of isolate ourselves and we looking to community, looking for collaboration, looking for good consultation with people who know us and can say, hey, I'm noticing something. I'm noticing you're doing something different with this client, or I'm noticing you might be out of frame with yourself. So having good people around us that add to our community. So those are some of the self-care.
I know that sometimes we have a busy schedule. We have too many clients to work with that sometimes we neglect our self-care. So can you share 3 challenges that you face as a trauma therapist that gets in the way of taking care of yourself?
Sure. I think not setting good boundaries for myself gets in the way at times, where I think that I have to attend to my clients' needs before myself. I think when I minimize my own needs and my own experience, I think that gets in the way. And when I'm overly exhausted, I think that is also something that really gets in my way of caring for myself proactively. I don't swim as much. That's one of my self-care routines. I don't go on my walks with my dog. I feel less creative. And if I'm numb or dissociative and slowing down, that will get in the way. And, there's always something to do in this field. There's always another client who needs us. There's always something organizationally I have to tend to. So I keep thinking to myself, less is more at times, just like the work in trauma, right? Slower, we pace. Slower is better than faster.
Yes. And you share a little bit about setting boundaries. How do you think that mental health providers can set some boundaries?
Yeah. I think really knowing in oneself that, like, really knowing the system. Sometimes there's so much need, and going into a system and saying, there's way more need than what I can give, and trying not to internalize that we are the ones who will rescue or save, and trying to hold these boundaries that allow us the freedom internally to take care of ourselves and find balance. One of the ways I set my boundary is I have at Pivot, the organization that I started, we definitely have flexible schedules. So I try to think about how I'm going to schedule my clients and how I'm going to give myself freedom, whether that is more time off, like taking 3 days off in a row, or working a half a day and then having the rest of the day to do what I need to do for myself and, enjoying my own life. So I think the boundaries are a mindset. that I'm as important as the work that I am giving to others. A lot of us that come to this field, we are focused on healing others, but holding this internal mindset that I am deserving of my own boundaries.
Linda, do you have any self-care advice or tips that you can share with other trauma therapists or clinicians?
Yeah, I would say setting your own rituals and routines for yourself, being forgiving with yourself, having a lot of humility and compassion, that we might have very good intentions and it might be hard to get to that. Self-care is always finding a community of understanding individuals who help just with one's awareness. And I think that, my personal check-in with myself is when I'm losing my own creativity, when I feel a little bit more dull, that's when I'm thinking something else is going on. So I'm really looking at my own sense of how I know myself. And if I'm less creative, then I really want to attend to myself.
I think we can use that, or use the word of like those red flags that we can see on ourselves, those changes,
Yes.
mood, right? Or things that we enjoy,
Yes.
we're not doing. And that could help us like, okay, I need some time off. I need to take care of myself.
Right. Yeah.
Is there something else that you want to share with our audience today, Linda?
Yes, I would. I would like to say, the work that we do is so important and it is so life affirming, I think. I can't imagine not doing this work. I've learned a lot about myself and others, and attending to ourselves is also part of the work. And being in awareness with ourselves and managing ourselves and finding our own window of tolerance. So I would encourage those who are listening to really start to develop a wonderful community around you that can support you, and also an internal community for yourself. And I'm also just excited to be in company with people who are like-minded.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing with us your thoughts and your self-care practices. I hope that your routine could help other clinicians also in the mental health. So thank you very much for being with us today, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much, Isa.
The Checking In podcast is produced by the Great Lakes Mental Health Technology Transfer Center with funding from cooperative agreements with SAMHSA. We encourage you to connect with the Great Lakes ATTC, MHTTC, and PTTC on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube to discover many more free products and resources just like this.